Black Bag begins with a problem that would destroy most people before the mission even starts. A top British intelligence officer is told that someone inside his own circle has leaked a deadly program that could kill thousands. There are only a handful of suspects. One of them is his wife. What makes the story work is that this is not a loud spy movie built around explosions. It is a tense and controlled game of secrets, suspicion, and marriage, where every conversation feels like a trap and every person in the room is hiding something. The film opens with George Woodhouse, a senior counterintelligence officer, being quietly pulled into a crisis. His superior, Philip Meacham, gives him a list of 5 names connected to the leak of a covert software weapon called Severus. The program is not just another stolen file. It can trigger a nuclear reactor meltdown, which means the wrong people could use it to create mass death while making the disaster look like an accident. George has only a short time to find the traitor before the damage becomes irreversible. The list of suspects is painfully personal. There is Clarissa Dubos, a satellite imagery expert. There is Freddie Smalls, a case officer and Clarissa's boyfriend. There is James Stokes, another officer in the service. There is Dr. Zoe Vaughn, the staff psychiatrist who is involved with James. And then there is Catherine, George's wife, one of the most respected officers in the service and the person he trusts more than anyone else. Instead of starting with raids or arrests, George does something colder and much more revealing. He invites all 4 colleagues to dinner. Catherine is there too, turning the meal into a test disguised as a social evening. George secretly doses the food to make everyone less guarded. Then he turns dinner into a psychological game. He asks each guest to expose something about the person beside them, supposedly in the spirit of honesty. The result is a disaster. Old resentments rise to the surface almost immediately. George watches every face, every hesitation, every attempt to avoid eye contact. The room becomes more hostile by the minute. Then the evening explodes when Clarissa learns that Freddie has been unfaithful. In a flash of rage, she grabs a steak knife and stabs him through the hand. Blood hits the table, everyone is shaken, and George gets what he wanted. He now knows that this group can be pushed into revealing more than they intend. That same night, Philip Meacham dies at home. Officially, it looks like a heart attack, but the timing is too perfect to trust. George understands that whoever leaked Severus is also cleaning up loose ends. The investigation instantly becomes more urgent and more dangerous. George starts looking harder at Catherine because he has to. He notices a ticket stub for a film called Dark Windows in the trash. It seems minor, but Catherine behaves strangely when he brings it up. The next morning he casually suggests they see the film together, and Catherine claims she knows nothing about it. That small lie lands hard. George is too skilled at reading people to ignore it. He also learns that Catherine is leaving on a work trip she cannot explain. In their world, unanswered questions are normal, but now every unanswered question looks like betrayal. At the office, more pieces begin to move. George slips into Catherine's workspace and discovers records linked to Zurich. Then James approaches him with another bombshell. He claims Catherine is connected to a secret Swiss bank account containing millions under a false identity. Suddenly the picture looks damning. A covert trip, hidden money, unexplained lies. If George were investigating anyone else, he would already be convinced. But George is careful. He does not rush toward a conclusion even when it hurts. He pressures Clarissa into helping him temporarily redirect a surveillance satellite. Using that narrow window, he watches Catherine in Zurich meeting a Russian contact named Pavlichuk. From a distance, it looks exactly like an illegal handoff or a purchase. George sees his wife sitting with a man who should not be near her, and he still refuses to accept the obvious without proving it. While George watches everyone else, the others begin watching him. Clarissa tells Freddie about the satellite move. Freddie quietly warns Catherine that George suspects her. Zoe uses her therapy sessions to dig into private fears. James keeps positioning himself as helpful while nudging suspicion in George's direction. The whole office starts to feel like a nest of mirrors, where every reflection is distorted and no one knows which version of the truth is real. Then George is called into a meeting with Arthur Stieglitz, the head of the service. Arthur tells him the satellite outage happened at the exact worst moment. During that brief blind spot, a dangerous Russian target escaped observation with the Severus program in hand. That means the traitor is not just leaking information. The traitor is actively helping the operation succeed. The scale of the crisis becomes horrifying. If Severus is used, civilians could die in a reactor meltdown designed to reshape global politics through terror. By this point, George realizes something else. The case is beginning to look too neat. Too many clues point at Catherine, and some of them feel planted. He finally brings his concerns to her directly. Instead of collapsing under the accusation, Catherine meets him head-on. She has been operating in secret but not against him. She believes she is being set up too. The two of them begin comparing notes, and for the first time the film makes it clear that their marriage is not fragile in the way everyone around them assumes. Once they align, the story changes. What looked like a husband hunting his possibly traitorous wife becomes a married pair turning the investigation back on everyone else. Catherine explains that her Zurich contact was part of a desperate effort to intercept the stolen program before it could be used. She suspects Arthur is involved in a much larger plot, one that aims to trigger catastrophe inside Russia in order to destabilize the government. The logic is monstrous. Innocent people would die, but some in intelligence are willing to dress mass murder up as strategic necessity. Catherine uses Clarissa again, this time to locate Pavlichuk more precisely. Then she passes the location to a Central Intelligence Agency contact. A drone strike wipes out the target before the plan can move further. It is a ruthless move, but in this world it is also practical. If the program disappears with the man carrying it, disaster may be avoided. George keeps working his side of the board. He brings Clarissa, Freddie, James, and Zoe in one by one for polygraph sessions. These scenes are some of the most revealing in the film because George does not just ask about Severus. He probes marriages, affairs, loyalties, and private shame. During these sessions, he learns that the group is even more tangled than he realized. Freddie has been involved with Zoe behind Clarissa's back. Zoe, despite being a psychiatrist with access to everyone's vulnerabilities, has her own moral breaking point. James is arrogant, ambitious, and too sure that he can control every room he enters. Clarissa seems slippery, especially because she can mislead the polygraph, but George senses that her lies are about love and self-protection more than treason. As George builds the full picture, he sees that there were never just one plot in motion. There were two. One plot was the real leak, the other was a shadow effort to stop it. The second dinner becomes the stage where everything is finally exposed. George and Catherine invite the same four people back to the house. This time the atmosphere is even more tense because everyone knows they are walking into something dangerous. There is no real meal. Catherine places a gun on the table before anyone settles. The message is clear: the games are over. George takes control of the room with quiet precision. He asks each person a single question, and each answer peels away another layer of deception. He reveals that Freddie and Zoe had an affair. He reveals that Zoe learned about Severus from James after James talked too freely while drunk. Unlike the others, Zoe could not accept the idea of allowing a reactor disaster to murder civilians for political gain. She told Freddie, and together they tried to use Catherine as a way to stop the handoff. That explains part of the confusion that George had been chasing. Some suspicious actions were not acts of betrayal at all. They were clumsy attempts to prevent a greater crime. Then George names the true core of the conspiracy. James and Arthur were working together. James leaked Severus and intended for it to be used in a way that would throw Russia into chaos. Arthur, positioned high above the rest of them, protected the plan and shaped the investigation to point away from himself. Philip Meacham became a problem because he knew too much, so James poisoned him and let the death pass as a natural medical event. The room freezes when the full accusation lands. James tries to bluff his way out, claiming George has only theories and no proof, but George has been planning this confrontation carefully. The entire conversation is being recorded. James has already said too much, and in trying to defend himself, he has walked straight into confession. Desperation takes over. James reaches for the gun on the table and fires at George, but the weapon is loaded with blanks. George knew he would go for it. Before James can recover, Catherine pulls out a real gun she kept hidden in her bag and shoots him dead. It is a shocking moment, but the film has earned it. Catherine is not killing in panic. She is ending the threat the second it becomes unavoidable. After James is dead, George and Catherine deal with the aftermath in a way that fits the cold world they occupy. George takes the body out on a boat and dumps it into the lake. The others are spared because, however compromised they were not the architects of the plot. Zoe and Freddie were trying to stop mass murder, even if their methods were secretive and reckless. Clarissa was used and manipulated more than she understood. Catherine then confronts Arthur. She lets him know the operation has failed and makes it clear that she knows exactly what he tried to do. It is less a legal reckoning than a power move. She does not need to shout. She simply leaves him with the understanding that his position is no longer safe and that she and George will not be turned against each other again. What makes the ending land is that the film never treats the spy mystery as more important than the marriage at its center. George and Catherine survive because they understand the difference between secrecy and betrayal. In their world, everyone lies for work. Everyone withholds. Everyone uses the phrase black bag as a shield when a subject is too sensitive to discuss. But George and Catherine know when the lie serves protection and when it serves destruction. That is why the traps built around them fail. The final note of the movie is almost playful, though still edged with danger. The secret Swiss account, the one used to cast suspicion on Catherine, remains untouched. Catherine asks about it, and George admits the money is still there. For a moment, the two of them entertain what that means. After everything they have endured, after all the manipulation, the lies, the blood, and the tests of loyalty, they are still together, still clever, and still standing. The Black Bag ends not as a story about one mole in an intelligence office, but as a story about trust under pressure. George solves the case because he is patient, observant, and ruthless when he needs to be. But he survives it because he never stops understanding the woman beside him. In a world full of spies who use love as leverage and loyalty as bait, George and Catherine remain the one partnership that cannot be split apart. And that is what makes them the most dangerous people in the room.